I finally got a microphone. Welcome back to JunkDrawer Studio. My name is Betsy. I wanted to kick this video off by thanking everyone who showed support and watched and liked and subscribed because you discovered my last video, which was my zombie-side terrain build. That was a huge labor of love. That took me over a year to complete, and I was so excited to share it with my audience, and it brought me a lot more subscribers as well. So I just can't say how grateful I am for the support, and hopefully you stick around and see what else I'm up to. On that note, I won't have a video that big probably for a while. I mean, I'm gonna make things just that detailed and commit that much to it in terms of detail and craftsmanship. You know, I gotta set the expectations, but hopefully you like some of the other crafts that I do, including the one for today. We're gonna be making what I'm calling low poly scatter terrain. We've got a little tavern, we've got some trees, we've got some rocks, we've got all sorts of cool stuff, and I'm really excited to share this with you. But I do want to talk a little bit about why I'm making this in the first place. So a little while ago, I saw this art popping up on my Instagram or YouTube, I can't remember. And I thought this art and this style was just so cool. My understanding is it's carved out of wood, and it got me thinking this could be really cool for scatter terrain. Something different, something simple, something a little bit more playful as well could be cool for Dungeons and Dragons terrain and any type of RPG scatter terrain. I also work in the motion graphics and animation industry. I'm not a 3D artist, but low poly style 3D renderings is something that's very popular in motion graphics. Some examples like this. And while this isn't my area of expertise, I do love this style. So combining this sort of woodcut that I saw and this low poly art that I've always loved, I thought this was a cool opportunity to make some interesting and unique D&D scatter terrain. So without further ado, let's jump in. In this video, I decided to do my concept sketching on paper because I wasn't really trying to work out every little detail for each custom tile and piece. I kind of just wanted to quickly work out what elements I needed in each hex tile. So as you can see, I start drawing a little lip on the edge. I thought that would be kind of fun to separate sort of a grass or otherwise a terrain top and maybe like a dirt bottom. That seemed like a cute idea. I've made some notes for myself to kind of, again, remind myself what details I wanted. Do I want a little inner groove edge type of thing here? I did end up doing this and I'm really happy with it. There's no mechanical reason. I just thought it would add a little extra detail and texture. I didn't end up adding any water to these, but I thought those could be cut in as well if I wanted any tiles with a river. And then I just colored it in for fun. I had a lot of fun with this. I didn't really need to color it in. But yeah, there are all my notes, and then I just jumped in cutting out the tiles. First, I needed to make a sort of guide for the hex tiles. I wanted them to be the exact same size. So I saw this tutorial online where I start with a square piece of paper and fold it in a very particular fashion, as you can see me doing here, to then create a hex. I was going to narrate the exact steps. You can kind of see what they are from watching this video back, but I don't know, I kind of struggled with this. I think instead I'm just gonna link to the video in the description below. So if you wanna figure out how to cut a perfect hexagon, go click on that video. It was really helpful. I will say you do have to be really exact with this. I go back and forth to the video a million times. It's not very complicated, but if you need it to be an exact hex, these marks and folds also need to be exact. Little bit of foreshadowing here. I did end up doing this multiple times because it was hard to get perfect. Oh, I also put my head in front of the camera once or twice. So here's my first attempt. It kind of looks pretty good on camera, but it was way off. Like the top and bottom in this shot you can see are a little bit at an angle. I was not satisfied with it. So I did it a few other times and eventually I made a couple and just kind of looked at them and decided which one was the best. I used 1 and 1/2 inch pieces of XPS foam and some fresh snap blades. You can get these for really cheap at like your local Home Depot or hardware store. I used the guide to make another guide on some thicker chipboard because I thought that this piece of paper wasn't going to be sturdy enough to cut 1,000,000 of these hexes out. And then I just traced the hex right onto the foam. I did it with a pencil and went to town with the blade. Now, this did take a while because the thing with cutting XPS foam, it cuts really easily if you have a sharp blade, but it also tears really easily. So in order to avoid that, I just went really slow. You can also see me here sanding the imperfections. This worked fairly well. I would recommend sanding very, very, very gently and maybe a slightly finer grit than what I used because it did leave like little fuzzies, but I was pretty happy with this. Here you can see me cleaning it up a little bit. I'm happy with it for not having a Proxxon hot wire cutter. I think this is pretty good for having done with a knife. Here you can see a little time lapse of me cleaning the pieces up even further. I used a little file and a blade. I was fine with slight little chips because, again, this is kind of supposed to mimic woodcut, but I didn't want it to be too chipped up. So I really only leaned into where I already had mistakes to make little cuts. I also went ahead and beveled the edges slightly with that same file. And I think it's pretty cute for doing it by hand. I was gonna cut the groove in with these really cool Japanese wood cutting tools, but as you can see here, I tested it out and it did not work at all. These are really sharp. I don't know why it didn't work, but I decided to just use a pencil and some carving tools to just carefully cut in the grooves. I used a highlighter because it wouldn't really dig in. Again, foam is pretty soft. Even this like sturdy XPS construction foam, you can bend it and rip it pretty easily. So I used the highlighter to make a very gentle line. Went over it with pencil, went over it with some more carving tools just to slowly etch in this line. Again, it's really easy to kind of rip it, so I didn't want too many imperfections. I wanted this to look like it was carved into the wood very intentionally. If you watched my previous lighthouse video a few episodes back, I do, oh yeah, there it is, kind of ripped, but that's okay. I do tend to hack into the foam in that video a lot, and it looks cool. It looks all torn up and distressed, but that's not the look I wanted here. So I was just being careful. Here I'm drawing out the groove that I eventually cut in. I just used a really sharp blade, cut the side. I eyeballed all of this, like no joke, and I think it came out really good for eyeballing it. You can measure if you want, but a sharp blade and being patient and just having a steady hand it worked for me. And as you can see, I'm chopping into the side and back into the top over and over and sanding it a little bit, but it didn't need much. I just did it by hand and I think it looks pretty straight and pretty awesome. Again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I think this rocks. This is where I decided to switch to this slightly more expensive snap blade. It's not expensive, it's just more expensive than the really cheap anvil ones. And oh my god, this works so much easier. You get what you pay for, use a more expensive one. Again, this was not expensive at all. It was in comparison to the other ones, and it cut so nicely. Once I started using that blade, I made a bunch of the inch sized. These are 1/2 inch, and then I took an inch piece and a 1/2 inch piece, glued it together with this Bob Smith Industry foam safe super glue. If you use foam, you need this stuff is awesome, and glued them together to make those tall stacks. And yeah, I think these look so cool. I'm already having so much fun here, like stacking them up and imagining what they're gonna look like once they're all painted. Here I'm starting to imagine what I want the rocky features to look like. I wanted to make some scatter that could go on these hex tiles, and rocks was where I started. So I just, carved into the foam in the style that I wanted to make some rocks. I wish I had a more in-depth tutorial for how I did this, but I kind of just cut shape of rock. That's what I did. Then I started making the trees. First, I took a sort of pyramid piece of scrap foam and just slowly shaved down the sides until it had that low poly look that I was going for. By the way, for anyone who is unfamiliar with the term low poly that I've used a couple times, it essentially is a 3D animation term that refers to the number of polygons that makes up any given shape. You look at a really highly detailed animation like a Pixar movie, those models and props and characters have hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of polygons, whereas a cube, for example, has six faces, 6 polygons. So these are just supposed to be low detail. Now, this is where things took a turn. Not a turn for the worse, just my scope kind of pivoted a little bit. My intention here was still to make kind of cool woodcut inspired looking terrain, but I was mostly thinking of this in terms of combat terrain, a battle map, something that you could move your minis around. But then I was like, this grass, these tiles are simple enough and nondescript enough to work as more of an overland map style of terrain. And now, while this isn't revolutionary, making an overland type of map, it is cool if you could use these tiles for both. So then my idea shifted, right? I was already thinking trees, rocks. Then I got to thinking, what if I made trees and rocks that could work at both scales? So these rocks work as difficult terrain that you would stumble upon during a battle, but if you put them next to a tiny little village, they also look like mountains. So this isn't revolutionary, right? I'm not the first person who has made multi-use pieces. I'm not the first person who has made mountains or rocks or trees or whatever, but I just think this style in particular is maybe a little bit unique in that you can get multi-use out of the green grass tiles themselves, out of the rock tiles themselves. I don't know, I could be way off base here in terms of the novelty of this. So from here, I decided to make one extra piece that really tested this theory out. I went in with my guide again and made a tile of 3 hexes that were combined. This was going to be a piece that was a little tiny village. Again, my goal here was to make this fit in with the set and to represent an option of creating a larger overland map with mostly the same tiles. I also started to make a bigger tavern. This will all make sense. I'm kind of going out of order here. To be the direct foil to this tiny little village that I'm going to make on that trio of tiles. So I'm making a full-sized tavern here that can be used in more of a battle map sense, or maybe just a slightly more zoomed in overland map. They really are supposed to have multi-use. And then you'll see shortly I make a tiny little village to kind of be the way more macro zoomed out version. I feel like I'm going about this a little bit all over the place, but that's just because this is a stream of consciousness build. I kind of just built what felt right at the time. And here you can see the tiny little village I was talking about. I also added tiny little trees to really sell the scale. And here's what I've made so far. This stage of sealing everything up with Mod Podge and black paint is one of my favorites. I say that in every video, but it's, akin to priming. I mean, it is priming essentially, which is where everything really gets brought together. You stop looking at it as the natural materials, which in this case is foam, and you start seeing it as what it's going to be in the end. I love this part. I just slathered it over everything. Then I picked out some colors to paint the individual pieces. I brought out a bunch of greens, mostly because I wanted these trees to have a variety of different colors. I've got some really cheap craft paints and some cheap-ish acrylic paints, and I just slathered it on all the trees. I was going for a variety of colors. In the end, you'll see they kind of all ended up looking the same, except for this one that you see me painting now. But maybe in the future, if I make more, I'll really try to push and pull the variety. I also did not forget to paint the little trees on the tiny village tile. This was kind of difficult to paint, but I got there. Next, I pulled out some grays and blues to do the rocks. I always just do like gray for the rocks. This time I added a little bit of blue just to make it a little bit more interesting, maybe a little bit more cartoony, since this is slightly a cartoony style of build. I then took a totally different green from the trees because I wanted it to stand out for the grass tiles. So this is for all the hexes that in this case will have grass. Maybe sometime in the future I can make different types of terrain. But this one, I just took some light green, painted it everywhere. I was very careful painting it on the little village tile just so that, I didn't have a lot of over painting to correct later. And it's looking pretty cute so far, I gotta say. This is where it's really starting to come to life. It's kind of reminding me of like Minecraft and, board games. And I just had so much fun with this. Now I'm adding some brown for the dirt. I did do a couple of coats. I don't think I filmed every single coat, but in the end, these got 1 or 2 coats each of all of these colors. I then went in with that same brown on all the roofs in the village, as well as the tavern, and I just really wanted the colors to work harmoniously. I kind of wanted to use a limited color palette. And on that note, I took some of the same grays from the rocks and browns from the roof and painted the sides of the buildings as well. Here you can see me pointing out this bright green. Essentially, I just wanted to paint a second coat to clean up some of the over painting on the buildings that ended up on the grass. I tried to mix up the exact same green, but clearly I was way off. So instead of yet again mixing another coat, I decided to splot on with a really messed up brush, as you can see me doing here, some more of that brighter green that was completely off, and just painting it on to add a little bit of texture. I added it to the full tiles as well, and I'm really happy I did this. I thought about doing it earlier anyway, but then when I had mixed up the wrong color grass, gosh, it's so off. I don't know why I thought this was right. I ended up just using that for this purpose, and it came out great. Here I've moved on to dry brushing. I love this phase. You probably know by now that I love this phase because I talk about it all the time. It just catches all the details. This is also when I started to realize that serrated blade I used really made it look like wood. I couldn't believe how much the weird striations looked like wood grain. That was a happy accident. I don't know how I will ever be able to reproduce that, but that was really cool to see. So yeah, I'm just dry brushing with some lighter shades in the kind of value and hue range of the original pieces. So here I used a lightish blue-gray for the rocks, and they're really awesome looking. Again, I took some additional colors to dry brush the tavern and the buildings and the trees as well. Here you can see the trees with the dry brush all done. They look so cute. It really looks like carved wood to me, at least. And here I'm dry brushing the tavern. This also came out really cute. I love how the little pillars looked. I was so surprised with how the roofs on the little village tile really popped with the dry brushing. I didn't think it would do that much of a difference, but these look so cute. I'm obsessed with how the little tiny ones look. And lastly, I did a dry brush to the edge of the brown bottoms of all the hex tiles as well. I decided to try out this Tamiya panel line color. I don't use this as much as a lot of other people. I've in fact never used this before. I know it's oil based. I don't know if this is exactly what it's meant to be used for, but I just kind of used it in lieu of a wash to really bring out the details. I did end up using a wash that you can see here, which is a mix of those two colors. For the bottom, you can see the left, I put the wash on, the right is without, and I'm so much happier with how this looks with the wash. I really just felt like it needed a little bit of saturation. I also wanted to knock back that dry brush a little bit. Here you can see me debating drawing some windows on with a Posca paint marker. This is literally real time me debating if I wanted to do it, and I did decide to do it. To be honest, I kind of wish I hadn't. I think it looked cuter before. I think the style of these builds is supposed to be really simple and lacking detail. So I don't know why I decided to do this. And finally, I just took a bunch of screws to weigh down all the foam. Foam is super light. I needed really small screws for the 1/2-inch pieces. Yeah, I just took various sizes and screwed them into the bottom. I also dropped my screwdriver a couple times, but that's just par for the course. This gave all the pieces a lot of weight and made them really easy to set up on the table. Last step, I took some Vallejo matte varnish. I really wanted to knock back some of the shine of particularly the green paint, which was a glossy paint, which I don't know, I probably shouldn't have used it in the first place. The matte varnish worked enough. It at least unified everything. Although, to be honest, it is still kind of shiny, which bothers me. If you have any recommendations for better matte varnishes that are like truly matte, let me know. And that's it. I just love the simplicity here. I'm really happy with how these came out. I've already said, I don't know if this is a super novel approach or anything super unique, but it's new for me, and I really would love to build more upon this idea of multi-use tiles in this particular woodcut low poly style. I just think it's really cute. It's pretty easy. I mean, I say that as someone who just loves hacking away at foam, but yes, XPS foam is not the cheapest material, but it's also, you're not requiring a million materials. You're requiring something to cut it with, the foam, the paint. You could really get away with just that. All that really to say, I love this idea. I think it's cool, and I had a lot of fun with it. I would love to make different types of terrain, maybe a desert, maybe an icy looking thing, maybe one with a river like in my concept art that I didn't actually end up doing. And I would especially like to play around with the scale idea. How many different things can I make that are multi-use? I think the organic stuff like mountains and trees works better as multi-use rather than like something really specific like the tavern. Like, this is hard to make multi-use. Let me know if you'd like me to revisit this. I feel like I say that at the end of every video, but that's because I'm genuinely passionate and excited about all of these ideas and videos that I've put out. And this is one that I would love to make more pieces for. This has been really fun, and thank you again for all the support. My channel has grown a lot over the last couple months, and I'm so grateful for it. I want to keep doing this for a long time. So like, subscribe, all of that good stuff if you feel so inclined, and stay tuned for more videos soon. And now here is the final reveal. Oh, also let me know how my mic sounds, because I think it's pretty cool. I don't think I need the little windscreen thing, but because I'm inside, but I thought it looked kind of cool. It looks like all the other people on YouTube. This is so stupid. I don't know why I'm saying any of this. It's true though.